Revolvers. Please welcome Doris. And we also have Jeanne Allen. She's Executive Director of the Macy's Fashion Incubator. Thank you for coming. So I'm going to pass the microphone to our moderator, Bryn, and we'll start the panel. Thank you.
Hello. So thank you everyone for coming out. We're really excited. A few months ago in September, I was actually on the panel in New York, and that was really exciting and a first experience for me. So now I'm here moderating it, and I'm really excited. And you know, FashTech is sort of not only working at LeTote, we're very data-driven, but working, you know, in this industry and finding out about FashTech has really gotten me into fashion technology. So I'm super excited to be here talking to you guys about what's going on in fashion technology. So our first question is, how do you see technology and fashion evolving? So, you know, our culture is so driven towards technology. How do you see that influencing fashion?
So I think that technology is giving access to fashion from a perspective of emerging designers have a lot more ability to get their product or ideas out there before kind of spending a lot of money. So I think technology is making it much cheaper, and then also because we're so engrossed in technology, that's the data piece too. So we're getting a lot smarter too. We're not just making guesses or making really expensive tests. We're actually iterating as you go. So I think it's made fashion, tech together, help the whole space become more innovative, but also leading to more personalization at the same time.
I think one of the key ways is it's breaking down geographical barriers. So it used to be that you were a New York designer, you were a San Francisco designer, an LA designer, London designer. Now, because of the tech and the access that the consumer has to your product, they don't know where you are. So that has made it possible for something like the fashion industry to start to come back in San Francisco. And the designers don't have to go to New York. They may eventually go to New York, but I know that at the Incubator, our fastest growing designers are growing here in San Francisco. So that's pretty major.
Yeah, it's excuse me. It's really interesting. I think there's where technology's come is what it's done is it's kind of bridging this gap between the offline and online experience, and I think that's what technology is seeing now. Whether it's in-store technology, whether it's wearable tech, big data, we're starting to see now. You know, that's the whole thing. That's why wearable tech is becoming such a big thing, is because all of a sudden marketers are going to have all this new information on you. But for me, it's wearable tech. It's not fashionable wearable tech. So what I'm really looking forward to, you know, at the moment, Google Glass, for example, is stylistically kind of held back by the hardware. You know, when my glasses are like Google Glass, then that will be fashionable wearable tech. And there's that divide at the moment. And you're starting to see a lot of people doing lots of cool things. You know, in London, when you're going to partner with designers to where it's, you know, I'm wearing this shirt, but there's like a, I don't know, heart rate monitor in it, so then it's connected to an app and stuff like that. So it's really looking at that divide, and there's just so much going on, and it is a new industry. It's just, yeah, there's just loads.
Yeah. I'm stealing this from one of our engineers at work, but he pointed out once, imagine if Apple had done Google Glass. How would that have changed the design of it? And we always talk about that, like it's kind of interesting company to company what happens when they're introducing fashion and technology. So you take will.i.am doing his watch versus maybe Fitbit or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and like you saw, I think fashion can be quite stubborn. You're starting to see now where more, you know, luxury, for example, it's not even a conversation about omni-channel with them, it's just e-commerce full stop. You know, people still talking about social media, it's like that's 10 years old. You know, there's so much new stuff that's happening. Recently, I think that Diesel's partnering with Samsung, the Gear, you're starting to see a lot more. Ralph Lauren did a 4D hologram show in Central Park. And then what I find interesting, and it's kind of cute because it's like Darren von Fostenberg, you know, she puts her models wearing Google Glass walking down the catwalk. I mean, for me, that's not really wearable, fashionable tech. You know, I think if you put anything on a model, they're going to look good. So again, it just kind of comes to that, but it's really interesting.
So, you know, we have a bunch of bloggers here. How do you suggest that bloggers find out about some of this, you know, wearable tech or fashion technology? How would you sort of advise them to find out what's going on, and why should they talk about it?
So I think, just given my experience working with different types of fashion bloggers, I think there is, I guess, the stronger ones that I've seen is that they do have a focus, but they also really innovate and are strategic about the content that they produce. So I think being aware of what's going around you, what type of brands are doing new things, and so to be kind of the blogger that reports on topics like that, you're offering something that not everyone else is offering. You're not just a blogger showing off really pretty clothes, but you have a point of view, and maybe that point of view is more on the cutting edge of what's going on in the industry. So I think to differentiate yourself, it's not about quantity of things, it's more about the quality. And I think really taking the time to kind of understand the industry is definitely a plus.
I think it's hard for emerging designers to be everywhere. They're doing their collections, they're doing their own marketing, they're usually a one-man band. Many times they're just working out of their kitchens. And I think they really depend on the bloggers to be their eyes on the outside world. And I think to the extent, these are people who are willing to experiment and they're looking for something new and edge, a way to differentiate themselves, white space. And I think the bloggers can be of great service in bringing technology to the emerging designers, making them aware of it and making them anxious to go after it.
Okay, and then what do you all look for as big brands? What do you look for in bloggers when you're looking to work with some of these ladies and gentlemen?
So I guess I'm still a small brand, but I work with big brands, and just being the liaison to a lot of big brands. And a lot of times brands will approach me and be like, hey, we want bloggers to help us promote something, but we want the top tier bloggers, or we want bloggers with a high following. And what I go back and tell them is that, you know, that's what I call vanity metrics a little bit, is that that doesn't equate to necessarily what your goal is, because a lot of times, you know, having a high following, it's not the right following, and it's not towards what you or your focus in terms of what type of customers you're looking for. So I think what I advise is like high engagement, and that's kind of the key.
What do you suggest for bloggers?
Well, I think, again, I'm always dealing with the small designers, and oftentimes when they go after the bloggers, of course they want the big ones and they're not interested in them. And I think one of the frustrations that they have come up with, which we see more and more, is that the bloggers, some of them need to be paid, others need to receive goods, you know, in kind, that kind of thing. So it really does limit smaller brands from getting their leg up and getting noticed by the bigger bloggers. We always tell them, you know, build your own following, and then that's your currency. You can then go after some of these bigger people. They will take notice of you if you have a lot of people following you.
And then what do you guys see as sort of the coolest thing that has happened in 2014 in fashion technology, and what do you predict for 2015?
Well, it's definitely visual search. It's definitely visual search, I think. No, I think there's so many different things out there. I don't know. There's loads of cool different apps. I think what I like is there's this whole group of people that are starting to look at different ways in providing a better experience for the consumer. And ultimately, where technology comes into play is how, as a consumer, I want to be able to purchase something quick. I see it, I want to buy it, and I want to buy it now, and I want it delivered. And we saw that in New York when Kate Spade did the window shopping, which was so cool. And it's, again, being able to position yourself in a time where everyone leads busy lifestyles, and how can you make it easier for a consumer to purchase? But yeah, I think visual search was the coolest thing that happened in 2014. 2015, I'm just so excited because I think this year has very much been the early adopter phase. You know, going into next year now, we're going to start to see a lot more companies implementing different types of technologies. As I mentioned before, I think wearable tech now is just going to get better and better and better. And yeah, it's pretty cool.
So I've done a lot of collaboration with retailers inside their stores, so I'm most excited about the technology in terms of bridging the online and in-store experience. And I think there's a lot of cool things that are being done just from the dressing room level. So we're all about kind of creating shoppable content, and both from a blogger perspective and a shopper perspective. So I think retailers are really making a huge push to engage their shoppers in the store. So one thing I've kind of seen as a sneak preview is that Rebecca Minkoff's dressing rooms are really, really high tech, and she's kind of considered, you know, you like to take a photo of yourself, but you also want to know the items that you tried on. That kind of streamlined approach is where I think technology fits in without being too overbearing on the science aspect, but really kind of embodying what women love and kind of feel. So I think that is going to be a huge headway for retailers as they think about how to keep their customers engaged at the physical store level.
I sort of thought of this question in another way. I thought of it more of what was the most, I don't know, beautiful, technical that you've seen. And of course, I just remember the day that I saw the first Apple Watch, and I was wearing a Fitbit. And I couldn't get it off fast enough. I felt like I was, you know, it was like the Apple Watch is fabulous. And I think that on the runway, this for Spring Summer 15, what we've seen is really the technical fabrics come to the fore. Designers who are considered maybe a little bit old school, like Carolina Herrera, was using a neoprene fabric that looked like a silk charmeuse, and it was absolutely gorgeous. And then, of course, we saw what Alexander Wang did and what he did with text. So I think that it's all over fashion, and the designers, believe me, are just trying to connect with text so hard. It's not easy. It's not easy. And but the fact that everyone's here tonight, we're seeing so many exciting things. It's just very encouraging. And we also have collaborated at NewCo this year and Salesforce. I mean, it's really happening.
Well, sorry, what are the things that you guys are looking at?
What are we looking at?
Yeah, so in the Incubator, what are the main things that you're looking at in this?
Fabrics that aren't necessarily what you would look at and say they're technical fabrics. So things that are could be very, very sophisticated and not.
So what Ralph Lauren did with that?
Yeah, exactly. And Carolina, these were gorgeous evening dresses, and they were, I don't even know what they were. It was fat. They were fat. It was beautiful.
And then, you know, as a sort of a wrap-up question, how would you see technology influencing and bridging the gap between bloggers and brands? Perhaps as an example of something like what you're doing, or just, you know, the future. How do you see technology influencing bloggers and brands and their relationships?
So our technology kind of sits in the middle of that, so I think that was a great question for us, is that I think brands and bloggers can work at a much closer level and a much more frequent level with technology. So it's not kind of a one-way street where right now I think bloggers are just posting all their content, waiting and hoping to get noticed by brands. And then I think brands also have a lot of content to go through to really figure out who is the right blogger to represent me. So I think technology from a perspective of doing that matchmaking is going to really help that relationship become more stronger and also easier, and actually generate the returns that retailers are looking for. Because I know for us to grow as a startup, we can't afford kind of the larger bloggers, so we've really done this collaborative effort between a lot of smaller bloggers, but then I get to know these bloggers on a much closer level than I would have if I just had worked with, you know, 1 or 2 bloggers. So I think it's the technology that brings together and forms that community is going to really make the bigger difference. So.
What I'm interested in is knowing that if any of the bloggers are doing podcasts, because this is, I think, really a huge opportunity. It's so easy, it's so much easier to put on your headphones and listen to something, some entertainment, rather than reading thing after thing after thing. So podcasts are just exploding. And I'm not seeing too much in the fashion end. I'd like to see that.
You know, we just watched the Macy documentary that got released on HBO, and just a little sound clip made all the difference, the satirical wit of everything, and I really think that could take blog posts a long way, right? Even if it just goes alongside the photos, and you get the voice and, you know, the change of tone, and it adds so much more character to the story. Do you have any thoughts on how bloggers can use technology?
Video.
Yeah.
It's all about video at the moment, you know, like 80% people react more to video even than imagery. So, you know, I guess it might be harder to ask a blogger to buy Final Cut Pro and kind of sit there for a week editing together a minute video. But yeah, that's a really cool idea though, the podcast thing. Yeah.
Yeah, we at LeTote are huge fans of video. Carlina's sitting right here, and we made her do a video for us, and, you know, we are all about video. I think I mentioned this a while ago, so I think the video and podcast route is really innovative, and you should just bite the bullet and do it and learn how to edit, and it'll be really worth it. Yeah, I think we're all set.
Awesome questions. Thank you so much, guys. Do you have any questions from the audience? We'll take a couple questions. Sure.
Shout.
So my question is for Jeanne. I just wanted to know, in the Fashion Incubator, what is exactly that you're doing there? Is it just for designers, or is it for, yes. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
We're taking, we're just opening.
I'll take that.
I didn't even ask you to do this. We're just opened up the call for emerging designers for 2015, and I have all of the information on these cards. If anybody wants one, please ask.
Thank you, Jeanne. One more question we'll take from the audience.
First of all, I have to say that formally I'm an engineer, but I'm also an artist. But it's interesting because what you guys see is that the intersection of form versus function, or form and function. And in the past it used to be form versus function. And the question is now maybe look at its form and function. And I was thinking about, for example, fabrics. Fabrics are very passive. And the question is, you know, and the other thing is that clothing is very close to the body. So you can consider sensors and things, and you can consider fabrics that are active. So the question is how do you guys see how the function and form can start to work together? Because they're very disciplined fields, you know. Schooling and everything is completely different. So how do you guys see this intersection and how these teams could work together? Because it's like two different languages, you know. So.
No, absolutely, and I think, you know, if you want to go into it, wearable tech, for example, I'm wearing a pair of raw denim jeans. This is wearable tech, you know, the way it wears out, the way it changes. Ultimately, you could say it's a technical piece of fabric. And I think that's what you're starting to see is, especially with materials and clothing, there's so many new innovations and research being done. And I think, you know, it's very much in the press we're talking about, it's all about very heavy on the wristband. And I think looking at kind of that transition from silicon to silk and the way in which, you know, you can start to implement technology, whether it's woven. Richard Nicol in London during London Fashion Week, they did a beautiful Tinkerbell dress, and that was like that was using LEDs. That's been around for ages, but now if you're starting to partner with a designer that has the fashion know-how of form, and then you've got, you know, your MIT grad who like knows how to code and all that kind of thing, and then that's the function. And you need you building teams. And I think most startups here, you know, yeah, people will have a technical background or whatever, but I bet you a lot of people will have someone from a fashion background. And back in London, there's a few businesses that you're starting to see where people might have left Mulberry or Burberry or whatever, and then they're joining a cool fashion tech startup because it's emerging and you're starting to see it. Check out Studio XO. So they're Studio XO. So Nancy Tilbury, they work with Tech House and do all Lady Gaga stuff. And she's awesome. And again, it's looking at all that kind of thing and you know, talking about the future. When are we going to have like a digital skin, you know, and stuff like that? It's really, really interesting. And it's only the beginning. And again, people to think, oh, you know, that's Star Trek, that's in the future, but it's not. The reality is a lot of this stuff is available here and now. You just need some people willing to partner up with, you know, a large brand or whatever to start to implement this.
And then, you know, in a more abstract thought, what LeTote is doing is we're actually using, you know, data or the function or these engineers are slaving away for us, figuring out how to personalize the shopping experience for our customers so that we can use data or use coding to pick out what to send women based off of their personal preferences. Now I go online and I shop and I'm like, wait, I don't want to shop. Like, pick out the things for me website and then tell me what I want. And so that you could bridge the gap that way. Or I think at the New York FashTech, there was a purse company that had a phone charger in it. And it seems so simple, right? But there's function and then there's form. And it's making a great object for me to use when my phone runs out of battery.
Which one is it? I want to buy one.
Empowered bags.
Empowered bags. Oh, awesome. What a name.
I think it's hard because actually the garment business is so traditional, and it's hard to break through the kind of prejudices that people have. I mean, it's amazing people still go, oh, I don't wear polyester, when probably everything they're wearing is polyester. You know, it's like they still have a sort of a 1950s mentality about right now. So I think it's really great when some of the really important designers are willing to do very innovative things on the runway because it gives permission for a lot of other people to experiment.